morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to today's live training: 5 killer mistakes that stop six-figure recruitment and search business owners scaling 7 figures. Let's dive right in. This is a training we want to put on for you called 5 killer mistakes that stop six-figure recruitment and search business owners scaling to 7 figures, or scaling, bigger than 6 figures, right? So again, just very quickly, one of the reasons we wanted to put on this training, for those of you that don't know, me and Terry Edwards, so again, father and son team on the Sun, before Terry makes that joke, we work with recruitment and search business owners all over the world, and we help them. I guess a few main things we help them with. One, we help them get more conversations with hiring managers in their market. Two, we help them convert more of those conversations into clients or sales for the right fee and the right terms. And then three, we help them build the systems they need to deliver on those assignments without it taking time and energy away from you as a business owner. And one thing that we sort of, over the years doing this, so Terry, I think Terry's been doing it for sort of 15 years or so, me 10 years. One of the things that we have seen or see quite common with recruitment search personas like yourselves is that there's always like a sticking point, a point where you get stuck or you plateau, where you're sort of doing well, you're doing okay, you're doing sort of 6 figures, you've got an established business, you've got clients that you're working with, you've got clients that rave about your services, you've got candidates who come back to you, you've got a good reputation in the marketplace, but you just feel like you're frustrated to an extent because you want more, and you feel like for the work you're putting in, you deserve more, right? So this is one of the sort of sticking points that we see often, and really there's a few reasons why this happens. There's a few mistakes that we see people make time and time again, and we just wanted to put on this quick training just to go over some of what they are, and also see how you can overcome them as well. So two things. Just one check in. Does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. Does that sound a bit like you? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. Let us know how you feel about that. And then Terry, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, and to add to that, I have the pleasure of talking to recruitment and search business owners from all over the world, 5 days a week. So in a month, typically, I'll probably talk to about 40 or so recruitment and search business owners, plus our actual client base. And I think the other thing, Drew mentioned the point there about this stagnation. Another common one that people say to me confidentially is that they have a friend in recruitment who seems to be doing exceptionally well and growing year on year, whereas the person I'm talking to, this recruitment business owner, is, as Drew said, stagnated. They're at 6 figures. Look, don't get me wrong, they're doing okay, but the question they're asking is, what's the difference that makes a difference? Why is it that some recruiters go on and thrive and others barely survive? And there are some fundamental reasons for that, so we want to share those with you today.
Perfect. So look, before we dive into the actual main content, I want to do a quick disclaimer first, right? So again, we're going to go over 5 mistakes. These are not all the mistakes that recruitment search business owners make. Again, we had to sort of narrow this down. Again, it's quite difficult for us to do, actually. So we sort of narrowed it down to what we believe are the most common, so what we see in the marketplace. We'll probably do a sort of part 2 and part 3 and maybe 4 of these trainings, just to give you some more mistakes that you might be making. These are going to be sort of the top 5 that we see, or the 5 that we see that if you fix today will make the biggest difference. And I promise you that if you do fix them today, or do stop making them, or at least aware of them, they will have an impact in your business. Second thing is, none of the things that we share are going to work for you without you putting the effort in, right? So again, we're going to share it with you. Again, nothing's going to change in your business or in your life unless you actually take what we share and implement it into your business, but I'm sure sort of goes without saying. So for that reason, there's something that we ask from you, and we do this on all the trainers we put together, right? Some of you would have seen our trainers before, is that we want you for the next sort of 45 to 60 minutes to be fully engaged, right? So that means to shut down your emails, turn off Facebook, turn off LinkedIn, turn off any distractions, just fully engage in the training I'm going to share with you today. And again, that's the only way you're going to get the most out of it. There's going to be no sales pitch at the end, so we're not offering anything to buy. There's nothing to sort of give you other than we want to sort of spend this next 60 minutes or so providing you with as much value as possible. If you do have any questions as we sort of go along, use the chat box on the right hand side to ask questions, and then again, we're happy to answer them as we go as well. Again, is that okay with everybody? Just give us a yes or no in the chat box. If it's a no, you're free to leave now. Obviously, no hard feelings. But if it's a yes, let us know. We want to make sure that everyone is fully engaged before we sort of dive into the main training. We only want people here who are going to be as committed to we are to delivering it. So give us a yes in the chat box if you're in, no if you're not, and that's fine. You can leave as well. Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, Ivan. Stacey, Mads, awesome. Rick, nice one. Again, if you're in, give us a yes. If not, then that's fine as well. Again, we only want people here who are fully committed. Terry, anything you want to add to that before we dive in?
No, nothing at all, Drew. Had a bit of a minor emergency, but all sorted now. So you carry on, buddy.
Awesome. So let's dive right in, right? So the 5 killer mistakes. Going to start with mistake number 1. And that mistake is over reliance on one. That's over reliance on one, right? And this can take many different forms, right? So it could be that you are right now relying on one key client, right? So all your business is coming from one key client who, if they pull the plug, then you sort of left without any stream of business. It could be that you're relying on one key employee. So maybe that, you know, you've got an employee, a recruitment consultant in your team who's doing most of the billing. Again, maybe that employee could be you, right? Especially if you've got a team. Maybe that, you know, it's you that's doing all the billing. And if you have a bad month or you have a bad quarter, then the whole business is going to crumble as well. You're really fragile, right? It could be that you have only one key way of generating business, right? What we see is, right, recruiters that, so again, there's 2 parts to this, right? To get to 6 figures, the way to get there is to simplify everything, right? To be as simple as possible. So you often need just one client, just one key employee, just one route to market, just one method of bringing in clients, right? There's often the way to go. But when it comes to scaling, right, it leaves your business very, very fragile, right? So the implications of that, and again, you might have experienced this, is that if the client leaves or the employee leaves or that way of business stops working or stops working as well as it used to, you'll suddenly find yourselves scratching your head, wondering where you're going to get the money from, right? Again, just want to check in. Does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you'd add to that, and any examples you can give of where you've seen this present itself?
Yeah, I would say probably on average, 3 times a week, I get either an email, a message on LinkedIn, occasionally a phone call from somebody that's saying something like this: "Can you help, please?" Because you know we have a reputation for turning businesses around or growing businesses. I've been in business for 5 years, 10 years. I've had one key client, and over those 5 or 10 years, you know, I've done 500,000 a year, and business has been great. The decision maker in that organization is left, been made redundant. That organization has just been acquired. That organization is no longer recruiting. And they say things like, "I haven't done any business development for the last 5, 10 years or so." And they come out with this: "Because I haven't had to." By the way, that's not true. You should always be business development, but their belief is that I haven't had to, so I haven't done anything. And quite frankly, the way things are now, if I don't start picking up business pretty soon, with another year or so, this business won't exist. That's probably the most common one. The next one is, as Drew said, the one top biller in your business if you've got a consultant, or if you're the one person doing all the billing. Because look, let's be clear about it. If you're the one person doing all the billing for your business, you actually haven't got a business. You've got a job. You work and you earn. If you want to create a business is when it's not reliant on you as the business owner doing all the work. And again, sadly, some of you here right now listening to this, you probably know people, solo business owners, and something happens. They fall ill. There's a bereavement to the family. All these things are almost inevitable. And when that happens, there is no business. Can you see how vulnerable you are? And the most obvious one is one way of getting business. I've always used cold calling to get business, and that's always worked. It doesn't seem to be working anymore. And I always think, are you kidding me? Just using one method of getting business. And if you know this, there's about, I don't know, 70, 80 different methods that you as a recruiter can get business. If you're only using one, again, you're extremely exposed. And you're brittle is the word I'd use. You have an extremely brittle business that can collapse at any time. Don't do it. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Drew.
Yeah, it's just, I guess, just hammer the point home, right? And I think, look, what we're saying is, right, this is always bound to happen, right? You're always going to have one or a handful of clients who are responsible for the majority of your revenue, right? So that's sometimes unavoidable in a sense, right? But so I guess what we're saying is, though, is one of the mistakes people make is they build their business around that client, right? So they get one big client who's responsible for all of their billings, right? And then they hire an office based off that one client. They start bringing employees in based off that one client, right? So they've got all these expenses attached to the income they're getting from this one client or one employee or one route to market, whatever it is. And then that client leaves, the employee leaves, whatever, that route to market dries up, or maybe the market dries up and they can't suddenly, where that client can leave like that, they can't get rid of the expenses like that, right? So suddenly they're in this place where they've got all these commitments they have and nothing to and no revenue coming in to sort of pay for those commitments. Again, so I want to check in. Does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. I want to make sure we're clear before we move on to the next mistake.
And
So
look, and if it doesn't make sense, by the way, we're okay with that. If what we're saying doesn't make sense, please let us know. There's a question here from Miriam saying, what are the alternative ways to find clients outside of cold calling?
So there's lots, right? So this, look, again, we perhaps is not enough time to go into it in detail, right? But there's lots of methods for bringing in clients, right? There's lots of ways to get the client's attention, right? You think about all the platforms that we have. Think about where your clients are. You've got LinkedIn, you've got Facebook, you've got obviously the phone, you've got direct mail, you've got events, you've got Twitter or X as it's called now. There's lots of different platforms your clients are on, right? So it's the difficult thing isn't finding different methods. It's what we find is like most recruiters, as I'm probably saying all those, you're aware of those methods. Is that you haven't found a way to plug them into your business, or you haven't even tried to plug them into your business, right? So then you're sat here doing one, but sometimes I think one of the worst times this mistake happens is when that one method isn't working, right? But rather than going out and looking for alternatives or adding alternatives better, that people sit with that one method that isn't working, and then eventually they sort of to the point there's no return. Again, someone check in. Does that make sense? Give us yes or no in chat box. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just on cold calling, because it's a very interesting one. I have probably 3 or 4 friends who hold senior HR roles around the world, and it's worth looking at it from their point of view. The average HR director gets approximately 5 calls a day from recruiters offering services. That's 5 cold calls a day. Think about that. That's 5 calls a day every day. So in the week they get 25. In a month they get about 100 calls a month. If you're doing that along with everybody else, because it's just staying with cold calling, how can you stand out? Because everybody does that. And from the hiring manager's point of view, certainly in HR, they're saying we can't take all these calls. If I was to take 100 calls a month every single month, I wouldn't get any work done. But the recruiter thinks, now this is the only way to get business. I need to call the hiring manager and tell them how great I am, and what my mission statement is, and how long we've been in business, and the size of our database. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that it doesn't work, but it can be hard work. And there's other ways that you can get business. And what we say to our clients is we would say don't cold call anybody, just call people using methods where when you call them they know who you are. So that's the problem with, and whether it's cold calling, by the way, if it's network, if you're using that one method, either way you're going to be exposed. And what you want to be doing is using as many methods as possible. So if one stops working or something changes, the law changes or whatever, you can't use that method. It's going to make no difference to you whatsoever. No difference, in any way whatsoever. So again, think about it. Ask yourself this question: how many methods am I using for getting business that work? By the way, how many methods am I using right now for getting business? And if it's only one, you're exposed, and you want to do something about that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, anywhere that you rely on one anywhere in your business, then your business is fragile, right? So that's mistake number one. Moving on to mistake number 2, and again, any questions, use the chat box, right? Anything that's not clear, use the chat box, right? Mistake number 2, and it's linked to this one, really. Terry sort of touched on some of the implications of this. Is no predictable way to attract clients. So no predictable way to attract clients, right? So some of the ways this presents is well, a couple of ways, right? So one is that we speak to recruitment and search business owners, and they what they did is they set up their business off the back of their network, right? So the first few clients they got very easily. And those clients have been loyal, they've been reliable, and they've managed to build a six-figure business, six-figure income off the back of those, those clients they've got, right? But they've been happy with that, but they haven't yet been able to find a way to add additional clients to that, right? So once the network's dried up, they don't know how to build on that, right? That's what's one way it sort of happens. Or the other way is that you get recruiters who they can bring clients in, but everything's random, right? So it might be through cold call, it might be through LinkedIn, might be through word of mouth, might be through email marketing, whatever it is, right? They have ways to get clients, but everything's random. So it's not predictable. And so one of the biggest implications of this is, and again, this goes for anything you have in your business that's random, right? Yes, we have to rely on luck. Yes, luck plays its part in everything, but wherever random occurs, like random, you can't scale random, right? There's no way to look at the numbers and see the pattern, right? When we say talk about predictable client attraction, we're talking about ways that we can look at, okay, if I do these 5 activities, it's going to add 1 client to my business. Therefore, if I do those 5 activities 50 times, it's going to lead to this many clients, right? It becomes predictable. That's the only, until we've got like that predictable client attraction system in your business, it's really, really difficult to scale with any certainty, right? And again, you do get businesses that do it, but again, it's been made more based on luck rather than because of the systems they have, right? And again, I'm not saying that can't happen for you. It may happen for you, but a more predictable, more reliable, more guaranteed way to scale is to know your numbers when it comes to attracting clients, know what activities lead to 1 client, how many times you have to do activity X to get result Y, which is a client, and then scaling that, do more of that activity. Again, so I want to check in 2 things, right? First of all, does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, and the other thing with predictability, and I can almost guarantee, as you're listening to this now, you've probably got friends, or maybe it's yourself who you didn't have this predictable way of generating income or generating new business, but you got business in. And I mean, I've talked to recruiters every day of the week, and then they say, yeah, but we grew to 1 million, 1.5 million, and we're so successful. They're successful via luck. If there's no predictability, it was just lucky that the 1 client that they had said, hey, listen, we're really scaling now. We want 50 contractors, and we want 20 perm placements a year. As there's no predictability, they can't duplicate it. And that's a problem. If you can't duplicate it, you can't grow. If you could get the clients such as that, and they're looking for 50 contractors every year and 20 perm placements every year, and you had a predictable and reliable way of doing that, and you knew how to do it, do you see how that would transform your business? Because if you know exactly what you need to do, as Drew said, then you go, right, this is what I need to do, I can do it. If there's no way of you doing that, I want to repeat this, you could get lucky, but it will be based on luck when you pick up a big client and happy days for a few years. But it's not sustainable and it's not scalable, which is the key thing. You just can't scale on luck.
100%. So if you look at your client base now, do you know where do you know that however many clients you got, whether it's 5, 10, 100, doesn't matter, right? Do you know where they come from? Do you know what activity leads you to getting a client? If you lost all of those clients tomorrow, if they all emailed you and said, you know what, I never want to work with you again for whatever reason, could you go out and duplicate that? Did you know what you to do to get replace those 10 clients or 100 clients, whatever it is, right? And then it's not only just having it predictable, but is that way scalable, right? So again, this is not to badmouth cold calling at all, right? Just to be very clear. But cold calling is one of the ways where it's predictable to an extent, right? Because I know if I make 100 calls, I get this many people pick up, and I blah blah, right? It's predictable, but it's still not scalable, because the more clients you get, the less time you have to make the calls, and the less time you have to make the calls, then obviously your client attraction goes down as well. And again, this is one of the reasons why. So if you're someone who has you know how to get clients, but you sort of do it ad hoc, right? It's feast and famine in your business. Part of the reason for that is you're not using a scalable system, right? So if your method for getting clients involves your time, right? What happens is you got no job orders to work on, you got no assignments to work on, you've got lots of time. Then you're really good at business development, right? And you get the business in. The business comes in, you've got less time. Again, the business dries up, right? So it has to be not just predictable, but scalable as well, right? And if when you grow, as you grow it, you've got less time to do it, it's obviously not scalable. Again, so when check-in, does that make sense? Just give us yes or no in the chat box. Any questions on that, let us know. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Ivan. Awesome. Again, I want to hear from all of you. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, let us know. If it doesn't make sense, let us know. If it does, you're all on the same page, we can move on.
Yeah. Please let us know if we're not making sense.
Just give us yes or no in the chat box.
And any questions, feel free to ask any questions as well.
Cool. Awesome. So again, just to recap, number 1 is over-reliance on one. Number 2 is no predictable or scalable way to bring in clients. Mistake number 3 is not being prepared to violate the industry norms. So mistake number 3 is not being prepared to violate the industry norms, right? So, and again, most of you would have done this, and again, and I think you need to do this to get to 6 figures, but this is something that stops you getting 7 figures, is that we look at the industry as a whole. Probably when you started your business, you looked at, what you did in your previous role as an employee, assuming you was a recruitment consultant before. You looked at the competitors in your market, you looked at other recruiters you knew, and you looked at what they were doing, right? Like, you know, what do they do and say on their website? How do they win business? What do they do when they speak to clients? What do they do when they speak to candidates? What does their logo look like? What does their outreach look like? Well, we look at it because we want to model it, right? Which makes perfect sense. But then what happens is we get to a point, we get that will grow you to a point, but you get to that point and it's like you look like every other recruiter, right? There's nothing now setting you apart from the rest of the market, right? So we all look the same. And when you look the same, your clients are looking at you the same. So you get trapped in this sort of cycle of being a commodity where you're speaking to a potential client and they've got no way to distinguish you from your competitor, or for from any of the other recruiters in the market, right? And what this causes, it causes price pressure, right? So then they're now more reluctant to pay your higher fee, right? If you assume your fee is higher than the average, right, they're reluctant to do it because you don't look any different, right? And it keeps you trapped in this cycle of, if you're only prepared to do average things, you're only going to get average results, right? But if what we're talking about is scaling beyond the average, going beyond where you are now, we need to be prepared to violate the industry norms, right? But this is where, one of the areas we get a lot of pushback, because it's scary to put your head above the parapet. It's scary to be different. It's scary to, do something you're not used to, step outside your comfort zone, right? But it's the only thing that's going to get you to the next level. Again, just want to check in. Does that make sense? Give us yes or no in the chat box. And again, I want to hear from all of you. And Terry, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, this one always makes me smile. And people say things like, well, that's what other recruiters do. And when people say that, I always think, well, that doesn't make sense in of itself. If you think about it, up until the 5th century, everybody thought the world was flat. Everybody thought the world was, it wasn't until the 5th century that it was then discovered the world wasn't flat. So just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And as I said, I talk to a lot of recruiters every day of the week, and I say, your website, where do you get the idea from? Well, what I did is I looked at other recruiters' websites, saw what they were doing, and we've done something kind of similar. We changed the words. Think about that. And here's something to consider, by the way. About 25% of new recruitment businesses will fail in the first 2 years upon opening. 25%. 45% will fail in the first 5 years. If you make the decision to follow those people, think about it for a minute, and you're going to then copy what everybody else is doing. See what's going on here. And here's something else worth considering. Only about 3% of recruitment businesses owners become millionaires. Only about 3%. So 97% don't make it all the way to, let's say, to becoming a millionaire. But most recruiters will follow what most other recruiters are doing. And it's not just in building a business. You talk to most recruiters about, how do you find candidates? Majority of recruiters say, we use LinkedIn and we use job boards and we use our database.
Yeah.
If you're talking to the hiring manager, you're telling them that, the hiring manager's thinking, well, that's what everybody else says. We use LinkedIn, we use job boards, and we use our database. And you would argue, yeah, but that's what everybody does. Well, just on that one alone, there are other ways of finding business. So, example, and I hope who's someone I talk to, Rick, get examples of the norm that have been broken. So, again, don't take my word for it. At the end of this call, go on, do some research as to how many people use Facebook. Because what we know is the top performing recruiters tend to find most of their candidates via Facebook. And if you look at the numbers, how many billion users are on Facebook in comparison to LinkedIn, it's estimated about 22% of the workforce are actually on LinkedIn, but most recruiters use it. And more of your candidates are like to be on Facebook. And then you talk to recruiters and they say, but I don't know how to use it. And I get that, and I understand that. You've never been shown how to use Facebook as an example for finding candidates. I understand, but think about it, because a lot of recruiters argue, I always use LinkedIn, I always use job boards, I always use my database. And from the hiring manager's point of view, you're simply scratching the surface. All the evidence suggests that the top firms, they violate that. They don't look at and say, well, let's look at what everybody else is doing and let's copy that. But I can understand human nature why you would want to go, let's see what everybody else is doing. Let's see what everybody else has said on their website. Let's see how everybody else is getting candidates. Let's see how everybody else is communicating to hiring managers. Everybody I know cold calls to get business, so that's what we've got to do as well. But all the evidence suggests if you violate the industry norms, and again, think about the likes of Netflix or Apple or whoever, anybody that's highly successful, or Elon Musk, they violate the industry norms to become so successful. They don't do what everybody else is doing. Elon Musk says, right, we're going to make a car just like everybody else. Apple didn't say that. Netflix went to Blockbuster saying, hey, why don't you burn? Blockbuster laughed at them and said, it won't work because you're violating the industry norms. It's always, you can't download these movies. You're going to have to get it through a video. The rest, they say, is history. Excellent. Thanks for that, Drew.
Yeah, and I think with this particular mistake, I think one of the reasons why it's such a big mistake is because I can guarantee, as we're saying this, Terry, there's people listening who think, yeah, but I'm different, right? Because not every recruiter thinks they're different, and it's not even that they're not different. Every recruiter thinks they've got this unique selling proposition, and it's a unique, view of the market, and it's a unique way of doing things, and they may do. But when we say violate the industry norms, it needs to be in a way that serves your clients. It needs to be in a way that's better and gives you the edge, right? We had this conversation a few months ago, and I was making the argument that I don't think USPs really exist in recruitment anymore. Because when I speak to a recruiter, and again, you may be sitting here now thinking, I've got USP, but I bet when I ask you, right, you're going to say things like, you're going to base it on the amount of experience you've got, or your database, or how many years you've been doing. It's the same sort of pattern of reasons why that makes you different, right? But it's not about just being different; it's about being better as well. So again, so better in terms of what's good for your clients, but also better in terms of what's good for your business as well. Because everyone, again, like I keep saying, everyone thinks they're different, but they never really are, right? So if you're think about from your client's point of view, not what not your unique way of finding candidates, but from your client's point of view, if you're speaking to them or where you're marketing the business, what makes you stand out, right? And I promise you, anytime you speak about recruitment, and again, it sounds counterintuitive, but anytime you speak about recruitment, that's the thing that's making you blend in. So one of the things you can do that's a bit different is, rather than talking about recruitment, talk about the outcome that your candidates give, right? So again, I use rec to rec as an example. If I was a rec to rec recruiter, I wouldn't talk about recruitment. I'd talk about increasing your revenue, right? Because that's what, if I find you a top performing consultant, that's what they're going to give you to your firm, right? But what you find is most recruiters talk about the process of recruitment, the candidates, and not the outcome of the candidates. And that's what makes you blend in. Again, from check-in, does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you want to add to that, or any questions as well?
If you can stand out, you no longer become a commodity, because most recruiters I say, well, what fees do you charge? And they say, oh, we're just below market rate, because that way we can get our foot in the door. And the moment you're thinking like that, you're positioning yourself as a commodity. And by the way, there is no evidence that if you're cheaper, you're going to get more business. No evidence whatsoever. And then, again, that sounds somewhat counterintuitive. But if you ask the majority of hiring managers, do you want the cheapest candidate or do you want the best candidate? But I can't get you both. What's your preference? Majority of hiring managers say, I want the best candidate, not necessarily the cheapest. But there's this thing about, if I can be cheaper, I can perhaps get a foot in the door, and here's another one, and I can prove myself. There's no evidence to support that whatsoever. And I want to be clear that, this isn't a case of sitting here on our high horse criticizing everything. I understand why you would do what you do and perhaps try to be a little bit cheaper. Because if you've never been told there's a more effective way of doing it, how would you know? Because logic would say, well, if I'm cheaper than everybody else, I'm going to get the business. But if you go in at 20% and somebody else comes in at 19.5% or 17%, but all it is on price is a race to the bottom. That's all it is. Because if the client's going to buy on price, they're going to say, I'll go to the cheapest person out there. A percentage of your hiring managers will buy on price, but most of them won't. They say, no, hell no. Go back to the rec-to-rec example. If we're a rec-to-rec company, I'm saying, do you want the cheapest recruitment consultant out there, or do you want the best one that's going to add 200,000 to your revenue over the next 12 months? You say, Terry, it's a no-brainer. Let's get the best one in here. Just give us a yes or no. So Stacey, Rick, just give us a yes or no. Just really checking that this is making sense. And if you've got any questions whatsoever, please let us know. Anything at all. Miriam, let us know. Any questions about anything, please feel free to fire away. Ivan, please let us know.
Awesome. Again, just to finish up on that one, it's like any time you find yourself saying or saying to yourself or to someone else, that's just an idea, and you find yourself saying, yeah, but no one in my market does it that way, or my clients don't do it that way. That's a sign that you're not being prepared to step outside the industry norms, right? That's a good. If no one in your market does it that way, Again, there's a chance it could be a good thing. Right? I'm not saying that every idea that your competitors aren't doing is good, obviously. But sometimes, they're the areas where you can get the most edge, the most advantage is where it's been overlooked by somebody else or been overlooked by the majority, right? And that goes from your outreach, how you market your business, how you sell your sell your services, but also how you talk about your services as well. Awesome. Perfect. So moving on to number 4, right? Running through these quite quickly. Again, if you have any questions, let us know. Again, because we're going through these quite quickly, we've got some time to spend on some questions as well. So number 4 is, in fact, before I ask this question, let me just check in, right? I want to hear from all of you. If you have a team of consultants right now, or you've hired them in the past in your business, write the word team in the chat box. And if you're still a solo recruiter, just write solo in the chat box. I want to get sort of a gauge of the room and where we're at. So if you've got a team or have had a team in the past in your current business, write team. If you're still just you as solo recruiter, put solo. So a couple of teams, solo. Awesome. So good mix, right? A good mix. Right. So this again, so for those of you that already have a team, again, you probably already made a mistake. But this will start making it again. Those of you that haven't yet sort of bit the bullet in terms of a hire, this will hopefully stop you making it at all, right? Because the 4th mistake, and again, it's one we see most common, is hiring recruitment consultants at the wrong time. Right. And it's usually too early. So hiring recruitment consultants at the wrong time is usually too early. And again, I'll put it like an additional mistake to that is not letting them go soon enough as well when they're not working out. Right. So it's almost 2 mistakes in one. Right. So, and again, I'm not sure where it sort of come from, but there's a sort of a mindset or belief in the recruitment industry that a lot of recruiters we speak to, when they think about growth, right? The first train of thought before profit, before even revenue, is team size. People speak in terms of I want to grow my team from just me to having 4 consultants, or I'm at 4 consultants now, I want to get to 10, or even sometimes when you hear like sort of success stories in the industry, like rather than talking about profits and revenue, people talk about how big their team has grown, right? And there's nothing wrong with that on the surface, right? But again, most of you would have worked in recruitment before this, right? So you will know from experience that as being an employee, but most recruitment consultants don't work out. It's quite plain and simple. Think about anyone you've hired. If you hired, think about people that joined the team you were in if you was an employee before. Most don't make it. Most don't, they just don't get it, right? You're one of the if you've gone as far as start a business, you're in a minority in that. But what a lot of recruitment business owners think is they think, if I want to grow, if I'm doing 200,000 now as a solo recruiter, if I want to grow, I need to bring another consultant who's going to basically duplicate me in the business and get the same results, right? And we tend to think like that. We tend to have that ambition sort of inbuilt in us because of what we've seen our previous employer do. But it just doesn't work. And again, it's not saying it never works, but like we're saying, right, what we've found with most recruitment consultants, everyone's got a story of where they hired a consultant, they end up costing the business money, and they end up spending, the owner ends up bidding less because they're spending so much time trying to train this recruitment consultant, right? What we have a different mindset in this. Like rather than hiring consultant because you want to grow, we say hire because you've got a capacity issue, right? So you've got too many clients, too many leads coming in, and you need someone to deliver on the work, rather than thinking, I don't have enough clients, don't have enough business, let me bring someone in who's going to duplicate my role. Again, someone check in, does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, and if you go back to what we talked about at the very beginning, why would you bring a consultant into your business unless you've got a predictable way of attracting clients? And think about it for a minute. If you could say to a recruitment consultant, come and join us, you'll never have to cold call. We have a predictable and reliable way of attracting clients. Remember, we talked about violating the industry norms. Most recruiters that we talk to, and they talk about bringing in consultants, we ask why. They say, well, I work on contingent and, my fill rate is, say, 30 or 40%. But if we had more consultants, we'd fill more of the roles. There's no evidence to support that, by the way. Because if you're working contingent, and let's say your fill rate is 50%, which is still quite high for contingent roles, what it means is that other recruiters are filling that role. It's not because you haven't got the consultants yourself. It is because you're competing with 4 or 5 other recruiters to fill that same role. So again, we talked about violating the industry norms. What if you made the decision, actually, if I was to violate the industry norms and say, no, Mr. or Mrs. Hiring Manager, if you qualify to work with us, we work on an exclusive or retained basis. Most recruiters won't do that. And there's also this thing about bringing in consultants. There's an element of vanity involved as well. Group of consultants get together. How many in your team? How many in your team? Well, we've got 10, we've got 20. It's no indication of success, the number of consultants you got. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've spoken to, and bearing in mind, I talk to recruitment business owners every day of the week, 5 days of the week. And they say things like, yeah, we're doing really well. We've got 12 consultants. As one guy said to me, we've got 12 consultants and we're doing just over $1.5 million. I said, are you actually making the profit on that? He said, nearly. Think about that at the moment, for a moment. And by the way, he was working contingent. His fill rate was 21%. Even if it was 25%, it means that 75% of the time his consultants are working, you're not generating the income. Just step back and just let that sink in. If most of the time you're on contingent, your consultants are working, but they're not going to generate any income, but you're still going to pay their salary. Why would you do that? But most recruiters do, because they go for this. Let's get more. Let's build this team. So at the next event I go to, I can tell them how much I've grown my team. Or the next time I talk to somebody, I tell them how I'm going to grow my team, because that's a sign of success. Bullshit, it's not. None whatsoever. Again, note, this is violating the industry norm, because most people say, no, you've got to build your team. That's how you grow your business. And I want to be clear, we're not saying that you don't grow your team, but you grow it when it's right. If you've got a predictable, reliable way of acquiring clients, if you're prepared to violate the industry norms, and you've got a predictable, reliable way of acquiring clients, by all means, because you can say to any consultant, come and join us. I know if you do this, the results will be this. So we want to be absolutely clear. We're not saying don't bring in consultants, but don't bring them in too early until you're ready.
And it's about
the wrong time. Sorry, Drew.
Yeah, I was going to add, it's about having the right systems and processes in first before you hire anybody, right? Because like Terry said, right, in our ideal world, right, when you bring in a recruitment consultant in, you want to be able to know that you've got a predictable and scalable way for running your business, right? So if they do those activities in that order and in this time frame for this long, it's going to bring them. Again, I'm not saying you're about to get it exact, but thereabouts, they'll bring this many clients in, they'll make this much revenue, right? We want to have that before we even think about hiring, right? Because otherwise, we're and I think sometimes we do this, right? We hire somebody, we look at what they built at the previous firm and think, what, they're going to come into my firm and do exactly the same, right? But they haven't really got a process either. They come in and they don't deliver, right? It happens so common, and you've probably even been in a situation where you were that employee where you left the firm, went for someone else, and you didn't really have a predictable way, so you might have struggled at first, right? And sometimes you figure it out, like you're probably one of the ones that figured it out, but sometimes you get people in teams where they can't get the results they got at the previous firm because they don't have the method. So you need to make sure you've got that system built in your business that that anyone who follows it is going to get a particular result. But also, like we're saying that, there's two sides to this, because it becomes easier to let people go when they're not following the activity that works, right? Because it's easier to say, look, if you're not doing activity, then you're not gonna cut it here, right? And it's easy to know, okay, we don't have to wait a year. Sometimes happy wait a year longer, 6 months, right? We can know straight, very early if someone's not doing activity to the level that you've built the predictability to the rest of the team's doing, even you're doing, then you can let them go. So again, it's about being very cautious about when you bring them in, but also when they're not living up to your expectations in terms of activity, then letting them go as well. Again, so check in. Does that make sense? Give us yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, Rick said here, hire slow, fire quick. James, let me just answer your question. James just asked, what about hiring business development consultants on commission? Can they help with client acquisition, done sales or business development industry? I probably get asked this question probably 10 times a week. What people say is, if I bring in a business development person to win the business, I'm a great recruiter and I can find the candidates, but I can't always win the business. So I'm going to bring somebody in. Or they say, I'm going to get somebody to just do pure business development. They're just going to get on the phone and cold call it. If only life was that easy, you could just bring somebody in and you could sit back and fill the roles. There's very little evidence of that working, James. And look around and see for yourself. So there's very little evidence. In particular, if you haven't got a process, a reliable and predictable way of that business development person to do the business. If you can bring somebody in and say, this is the process. If you do this emails, if you do this on LinkedIn, if you do this on Facebook, this is the script that you follow for the calls, and we know the numbers. So example, some of our clients use outside setters. Hey, let me give some numbers. Their setters have to dial out about 150 dials per day, every single day. They will speak to approximately, I think it's about 20 decision makers in a day, and they will make 8 appointments in a day. But they've got all the data and they've got the scripts, and they've got the process for doing that. If you haven't got that, it's a bit like purchasing the car and not knowing how to drive. You can have the best car on your drive, James, whatever the best car is. I don't know a thing about cars, by the way. But if you don't know how to drive, complete and utter waste of time and money. It will look great on your drive, and you can tell your mates that you've got this lovely car on your drive or how many people you employ, but it probably isn't going to work unless you've got the process in place. Hope that answers your questions, James. Any other questions on that? Please fire away.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, Terry, is like the business development is arguably, right, and in my opinion, I might be biased, right, because I love business development, but in my opinion, it's the most important aspect of your business. To me, like, without that, I don't care how good you are at recruiting, how good you are at sales, right? If you're not bringing in the opportunities in the first place, then you've got nothing, right? You cannot survive without it. Even if it was possible to get someone to do it on commission only, right? I wouldn't ever recommend you to be in a position where you're reliant on them for your business, because again, like we just said, with mistake number one is relying on one thing. If I'm the one, let's say it's me, right? If you said, look, Drew, I'm going to pay on commission, you do business development, I'm going to do recruiting. I might know the right process and might be good at it, but then what's stopping me going, if you're reliant on me for your business, what's stopping me going off on my own, for one, or going to one of your competitors, going to the highest bidder? Because that's frankly what I would do, right? So you want to build the systems and know it inside out, so they're your systems, James, right? So you can get anyone and get them to do it, get them to replicate that same results. Again, someone check in. Does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you want to add to that?
No, not this stage. And just to add, I say no, then I say yes. Sales and marketing are the lifeblood of your business. As Drew said, it's without sales and marketing, you haven't got a business. Drew made a really good point there. You're gonna offer the lifeblood of your business to somebody on commission only. Yeah, very risky. I'll just leave that one there. Very risky. Richard, what were those numbers? Oh, again, Terry, 100 calls to
100 calls to hire managers each day. I'm not sure what that's referring to.
Sorry, Richard. Can you just type that in again? I'm not sure if I understand that question. Yeah, sorry, Richard. I'm not sure. Have we talked about that here?
You did it on a podcast.
I know, but
but yeah, I didn't think you did it today. I'm not sure what it's referring to. Why you sort of give us some clarification on that, Richard? Going to move on to mistake number 5, right?
So the business development. You said make 100. No, sorry. 100, approximately 150 to 200 dials. That's when you dial out to people in a day. Most of the people you dial out to, you won't get through to. I think this is what you're talking about, Richard. On average, you'll get through to about 20 decision makers in a day, and you'll make about 8, or the person will make about 8 appointments in a day.
Oh, is that with the setters?
This is with a setter. Just give me a yes or a no if that's making sense, Richard. So that's what we talked about just now. Yeah, great. Okay, that answers your question then, yeah.
Perfect. So again, just to recap on these, just to make sure we're on the same page, right? So number 1 is over reliance on one. So that's one client, one consultant, one anything. Anytime the number 1 appears in your business is fragile, and it's going to be very difficult to scale because things always break, things will stop working. Number 2 is no predictable and scalable way to bring in clients into your business, right? We need to have that in place. However number of clients you got now, you need to be able to duplicate the activity that got you here, so you can obviously scale it, right? If everything's based on random, or we don't know what's working and what's not, then it's hard to scale, right? Impossible to scale. Number three is not being prepared to violate the industry norms. Again, be prepared to stand out in the market, do things differently. Number four is hiring recruitment consultants at the wrong time and then not letting them go at the right time at the same time. Simultaneously. And then number five is not getting outside help. So number five is not getting outside help. And again, I was sort of reluctant to put this on, right? I'll tell you why. It's because I thought it sounds self-serving, right? I thought, we're bound to say that, well, obviously we offer outside help to recruitment and search consultants, or recruitment and search business owners. We're bound to put this on, but I think it needs to be on there, and for the simple reason that, I have not met a single seven-figure or multi high six-figure recruitment and search business owner who hasn't got outside help from somewhere. I just haven't, right? And again, Terry, didn't even feature about this. I don't know if you have. They've always got someone, I know, whether it's a mentor, whether it's someone, they've got someone who knows the path to get there. They've got someone who knows the mistakes, knows knows what's working, knows what's not, who can give them guidance. I don't necessarily sort of copy them, as to the exact, but they've got some sort of guidance, someone who they can bounce ideas off. Because I think being a business owner it can be a very, very lonely place, right? You work hard in a day. You've got your team who, in an ideal world, you want the team to sort of work for your business as if it were their own, but just doesn't happen. You've got, even your family at home, even if they're supportive, and you're lucky enough to have a supportive family. Not everyone does even have that, but even if they are, they still don't quite understand, right? So it can be a very lonely place. So I think it's always good to have someone who knows the space you're in, knows the path you're on, who's perhaps a couple of steps ahead of you, who you can bounce ideas off and who can sort of, guide you along the way. Again, I want to check in. Does that make sense? Give us a yes or no in the chat box. And Terry, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was reading the other day that I think 70% of North Americans are overweight or obese, and it's 60% in the UK. But here's the thing about that is that those people that are overweight and obese, they know intellectually what to do. The fitness industry is worth $46 billion dollars a year in the fitness industry, but the success comes, those that are best at losing weight are those that seek help. And look, you can listen to us now, you can go onto YouTube, you can find out the different ways of recruiting business, and you can go to Google and do a search on there. The information's there, but it's different getting the information and somebody saying, this is how you do it, this is what we know works, this is a template email that actually works. And it's getting that help. Or maybe you want a non-exec director who's been through the trenches and know what it's like. That's the kind of help that we're talking about. And yeah, I can understand you thinking, well, you're bound to say that because that's exactly what you guys do. All my experience tells me that's what top performers do. The top tennis players, the top footballers, the top anything, they get help. The professionals get help. Now, when I played football in the local league, we didn't have a coach. We just got together and we played and we enjoyed it. But I wasn't operating at that level, and most people don't operate at that level. If you want to operate at that level, get some help, or go to YouTube and do a quick search and see what comes up. And you'll never know what's true and what's not true. I would really encourage you to get some help. And this isn't about us. I want to be absolutely clear. Get some help from somebody somewhere, because it's so much easier. And Drew mentioned about how lonely this is. Any of you guys listening to this now, you've got friends or family or your significant partner, go home and tell them about the challenges you're having in recruitment right now. They just don't get it. Unless they've been in recruitment, they will have absolutely no idea. And that they've got no idea. So after a period of time, you probably stop talking because you think, well, you don't get it. And that's not a criticism. Why would they get it? It's so lonely. But having a mentor or coach or somebody to help you, and you can share those problems. I remember I used to have my own recruitment business. I remember talking to my coach at the time. And I said, I am so pissed off because right now we've had a lousy quarter. And this month, I've got to pay 2 of my consultants who are underperforming, and I'm actually going to take less money out for myself. And I've got to explain that to my wife as well. Darling, we're going to be a bit short this month. And she's going, well, why are you doing that when you talked about these 2 consultants that are underperforming? Only another recruitment business owner would understand that. And my mentor, was able to talk me through it. One of the things he said to me is, you probably brought them on too soon, really, didn't you? Yes, I did. And you probably held on for them for too long. Yes, I did. We've all done it. We've all done it. Rick's got here, Sharpen the Sword. I believe that's Stephen Covey's book. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, Rick. I believe it's Stephen Covey that talks about sharpening the sword. But yeah, absolutely, yeah. And thanks for reminding me that, Rick. It reminds me of we have something called the executive board for some of our top performers, and one of the things they're talking about is listening to their sales calls, listening to their telephone calls, because these top billers are constantly looking to sharpen their sword, and they say to us, look, have a listen to this call. I've just won the retainer. It's worth total fee was 60,000, but have a listen and look at what we could do even better. What can I share with my consultants to improve their performance? For a moment, imagine that you're competing against that, and they look at their performance where they've just got a 60,000. It's not a retainer; that the retainer's 20,000, and they're saying, "Have a listen to this call and let's have a look at what we can do better." And they've got somebody helping them, and you're saying, "Well, we'll just swing it again." You're saying to your team, "Just swing it," and your clients expect more of you rather than you just swinging it. They want to be working with professionals. I've got nothing else to add, Drew. I've really enjoyed that. You got any questions on anything I've said? Please let me know, Rick, Richard, Miriam. Yeah, any questions or anything? Please fire away. Our sole aim is to help you generate more business, make more placements. So if we can help you in any way whatsoever, please let us know. We've
Also,
only scratched the surface.
Again, just if anyone wants any additional help and support, if you go to makemoreplacements.com/start, again, you can go over there, book a sort of a free one-on-one call with Terry or one of our team. We can have a look at your business, see where any gaps are that we may be able to help. So that's makemoreplacements.com/start. So yeah, Rick's asked, is it the Edwards family or is it a coincidence? Yeah, so here's my dad. So yeah, any questions?
Well, I don't know about that actually, Rick, but anyway.
Yeah, Rick said lovely.
Excellent. Yeah. So yeah, please go. If you want to, we can give you a blueprint for your business. We'll look specifically at your business, what you're doing now, where you are now. We'll look at where you want to get to, and we'll put together a blueprint to share with you exactly. So I think Miriam asked about different ways of generating business. On that call, we can answer those kind of questions and share with you exactly what you can do. And look, what we'll share with you is what some of the top performers in the industry are doing right now. So if you want access to that, please go to makemoreplacements.com/start. There's no cost and there's no obligation. It's a free call where we'll jump on and we'll look at your business specifically. So please go to makemoreplacements.com/start.
Again, any more questions in the chat box? If not, we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for your time, guys. Again, I hope to see you on. We tend to do these every month, these trainings. Again, I hope to see you on the next one. Again, if you know any other recruitment and search personas who can benefit, let them know as well. And again, we'll speak with you soon. Until then, take care, take action, and be relentless.